There we go. My bad. I forgot that I needed to set the title because the VODs get fucked up if I don't. So I am picking an appropriate spooky background. Give me a moment. Day 2 of Wolfie's Voice hates them now. Let's see here. It's a good one. You guys should be able to see that, right? Yeah, okay, good. Hello, hello. And welcome to Wolfie Reads More Shit. We've got 2 stories from Chaos Dragoon. In the Twisted Tales series, that's on Fiction Press. Those he put in the Discord, so if you want to read along, you can go there. And if my voice will let me, I will read what you guys request. And we'll go from there. How does that sound? Sound good, chat? Chat? Don't know. What happened to chat? They were eaten by the gigantic hound. What a terrible day. We've lost chat. Wolfie Reads More Shit is shot in front of a live studio ostrich. Close enough. Alright, no, we're good. Okay, so chat is up. We're working, right guys? We function at least somewhat. Alright, good. I'm very relieved how well the tarot reading went. Thank you so much, Edgehead, for letting us do that as a family. But yeah, I'm going to read first from Chaos Dragoon, the Twisted Fairy Tales series, Chapter 9. Live out of these waters. Actually, you know what I can do. I can make this thematic. Haha. How's that for special effects? Alright, let's get into this. Mary let out a relaxed sigh as she allowed the water to cradle her. She loved when her 2 boys spent the night at friends, and her husband had his silly magic games with the guys. When everyone was out of the house, she could relax in the pool all by herself. Sure, the pool was good for family barbecue, exercise, and getting the kids away from whatever Fortnite is. However, she loved just relaxing in the water, letting it take her from one end of the pool to the other. Bubbles broke the surface next to her head, but she paid them no mind. She knew it was the lovely ladybug pool cleaner cleaning the bottom of the pool. Another set of bubbles breached the surface, and a thought popped into her mind. We should get a hot tub. She pictured a medium-sized gazebo with glass walls and a glass ceiling, so she and her husband Tommy could sit in the bubbling water during cold winter nights and look out into the starry sky. A smile formed on her face as she pictured the scene as a 3rd round of bubbles broke the surface next to her head. Wow, must have found a large patch of grime down there, Mary said to herself before adding, I'll have to remind Tommy to get more chlorine the next time he goes out. An arm suddenly came out of the water and wrapped around her neck before dragging her down. She let out a gasp before being submerged. 2 legs wrapped around her waist as she sunk deeper into the pool. She began clawing at the arm wrapped around her, but found no give as her fingers felt like they were digging through gelatin. Strands of yellow pus floated in the water around her as darkness began to creep into the corners of her eyes. She let out a gasp as water rushed into her throat, and darkness fully took her. Hours passed before Mary finally came to. The world around her sounded muffled as she slowly opened her eyes. When she moved her arms, they felt heavy, like a weight was strapped to each limb. When her vision finally cleared, she found she was lying on the floor of the pool. She sat up and gasped, expecting water to rush into her throat, but she found she could breathe underwater. She got to her feet and kicked at the floor to ascend toward the surface. When she breached the surface, she looked around and found that it was already morning. She turned to her house and saw Tommy at the bay window washing dishes. She quickly waved her arms and tried to call out to him. However, no sound came from her mouth. She saw him look out, but it seemed he didn't notice her. As he went back to washing dishes, she quickly swam toward the edge of the pool. When she placed her hand outside the pool and onto the concrete, her arm was immediately engulfed in flames. She screamed in pain and shock before she retracted her arm and submerged it back into the water. She winced in pain before she examined her arms. She saw the flames had already charred her skin, but soon the skin began repairing itself. She looked back at the bay window and her eyes widened. A figure had stepped out of the shadows and stood next to her husband. The figure was an anorexic woman with pale, rotting flesh. Some parts of her flesh were rotted to the point it was showing bone. Atop her shoulders was a horse head with the same rotting flesh. Its right eye was missing, and from its open eye socket leaked yellow pus, while its left eye had a white film over the pupil. Its bottom jaw was missing, and in its place were 2 long spider fangs. Mary began splashing and waving, trying to get Tommy's attention while she tried to yell. But once again, no sound came from her mouth. Tommy looked at the figure and seemed to laugh like it had just told a joke. He then kissed the figure on the forehead as he did to Mary every morning. She felt her stomach churn as Mary began to dry heave. For several minutes, the water rippled. She continued to dry heave. When she finally stopped convulsing, she took long breaths. When the water stopped rippling, her blood ran cold as she stared at her reflection in the water. Gone was the tall, tan redhead with freckles dotting her skin. The reflection staring back at her was mirrored the figure standing next to Tommy. She looked back up at the bay window to find the figure now hugging her 2 boys, Andy and Benjamin. She had enough of this and suddenly lunged out of the pool. As soon as her bare feet touched the concrete, her whole body was engulfed in flames. She let out a shrill scream as she stumbled and flailed her arms around as the flames began melting her skin. Her flesh peeled and turned red. She felt her right eye begin to melt in its socket. The water in the pool rose up in tendrils and shot toward Mary. They wrapped around her body and pulled her into the pool. The flames extinguished, and the water began dragging her down toward the pool floor. Her skin began repairing itself as her right eye began to grow back. It was apparent she could not leave the pool. When her eye fully grew back, tears started to form in her eyes as she curled up into a ball and began to sob. She couldn't leave this watery purgatory. For the next couple of days, Mary simply saw her family interact with the figure, like they didn't see or smell the rotting flesh. At times when she couldn't see her family, she simply floated in the water or swam around the pool to keep from being bored. Every now and again, she attempted to leave the pool, only to be engulfed in flames. It was worse when her family swam in the pool. The water seemed to pull her toward the bottom and held her against the floor as they swam. She couldn't reach out to touch them or even get their attention. Her two boys, who always dived down to see who could reach the bottom first, never acknowledged or even shown that they saw her there as she cried out to them. All she could do was watch as her family went on without her, as they spent her lives with that thing. One day, when she woke up, she saw a tarp over the pool. She quickly swam up toward the surface and tried to press the tarp off the pool. She recoiled in pain as her hands felt as though they were pressed on a hot burner of a stove whenever she touched the tarp. She could no longer see her family, no longer see if they're safe with whatever that thing was. Her days were now filled with swimming back and forth or simply lying down in the water, watching the ladybug pool cleaner putter around the pool bottom. Mary knew the seasons were changing, and the pool would be forgotten until summer. After several weeks of her normal routine of swimming and watching the pool cleaner, Mary noticed a small silver puddle at the bottom of the pool. She swam closer to it, knowing it was never there since her imprisonment. She slowly reached out and touched the puddle. Her hand went through the puddle, causing her to recoil. She examined her hand and found no pain, no burning skin. Was this way out? Mary asked herself before she placed her hand into the silver puddle. She took a deep breath and crawled in. She found herself still in the water. She let out a frustrating sigh. Then she noticed the bottom of the pool. It was different. She instantly knew where she was. 3 years ago, their neighbor, Adam, had decided to build a pool for his wife's birthday. He bought all the supplies and made her a massive pool. Since she loves Hello Kitty, he got pink pool tiles and arranged them at the bottom of the pool in the shape of the Hello Kitty logo. His pool was the inspiration for Tommy to build their own pool. But he wasn't the best at arranging tiles and wanted to arrange them in the form of a heart. But it came out looking like a pine cone. Mary stared at the Hello Kitty logo at the bottom of the pool, amazed at the silver puddle letter here. She then heard the splashing and looked up to see Adam's wife Susan skinny dipping. She saw Susan swim back and forth several times before she laid on her back and stared up at the night sky. The water wasn't forcing her to the bottom. Instead, something was compelling her to swim up toward Susan. She felt her body slowly swim toward her as a voice not her own echoed in her mind. I want to be where the people are. I want to be part of their world. That one is always such a chilling one, Chaos. Well done. I always get chills when I read that. Well fucking done. Alright. The next one. Damn, Ariel, you scary. Duh. You're not wrong. It's pretty close to my birth name, actually. People used to tease me about that when I was a kid. I also love to swim, but not as much as my sister does. We both love the water. I love the ocean, too. I like the ocean more than I like pools. Love swimming around. Just feel comfortable in the water. I don't know. Random shit no one asked about Wolfie. Alright. The next one is called Prince of Fame. I think I'll bring it back to the fire. Where is the fire? Ah, here. Or we could do this one. What do you think, chat? This? Or fire? Fire? It's cozy? Alright, we'll keep it as fire. The crowd exploded into cheers. Oh, shit. Sorry. This is Chaos Dragoon's Price of Fame. Not Prince. I'm a fucking idiot. Already I made a mistake. The title was supposed to be Price. No. I'm the dumb. I'm the stupid. I did the wrong reading. I did the reading the wrong way. I wrongly read. I read wrongly. I did... You get me. It's Price, not Prince. I'm just an idiot, and I added an N where there shouldn't be one. I'm a fool! A fool! It's Price. It is Price. I'm just stupid. Alright. The title is very definitely The Price of Fame. From our very own Chaos Dragoon. The crowd exploded into cheers as the band finished their song. The lead singer looked out into the crowd of her adoring fans and looked to her bandmates, who gave her a nod in unison. A smile formed on her face as she yelled out, "Y'all want one more song before we end?" The crowd erupted into more cheering. A smile formed on her face before she skipped over to her guitar player and whispered something. He nodded and mouthed something over to the other bandmates, who had a smile growing on their face. "Alright, before we leave, we'll give you one more song. But not only one more song. A new hit single." The lead singer yelled as the crowd cheered more vigorously. She nodded again to her bandmates before they began playing. She began nodding to the music before she began to sing. As the song went on, the lights behind the band would light up and illuminate their silhouettes to the audience. Now and again, the lead singer's silhouette would change and appear taller, and with what looked like skeletal hands reaching up from her shoulders, only to disappear and her silhouette to go back to normal. Once the song finished, the crowd erupted into cheering as the lead singer yelled, "Thank you, Syracuse!" 3 days later. The bathroom door swung open as a small 5'3" woman with long raven black hair walked out into the hallway, still drying her hair. She wore a baggy tank top and baggy basketball shorts. She hopped down the stairs to the living room before she hopped over the back of the couch. She flipped on the TV to see herself on stage, singing to the massive crowd at the bottom of the screen, saying, "Car crash on scenic route plays to a packed house at the Chevy Corp Pavilion." Her phone buzzed. She picked it up to see a message from Eric saying, "Emily, did you see? We're on the news." Emily rolled her eyes before she responded, and she sighed and let her head hang over the back of the couch. She cocked her head toward the door leading to the basement and sighed again. "Well, better get this over with," Emily said before she got up and headed for the basement. She opened the door and looked down into the pitch blackness of the basement. She felt at any moment something would run up from it and tackle her, but she laughed it off when she switched on the light. It illuminated the gray carpet at the bottom. She descended the stairs and let her bare feet hit the carpet. She wiggled her toes into the carpet, always loving the feel of it ever since she found it at the home improvement store. She looked around at the basement that housed a minibar, large TV and recliners for when her friends would come over for New Year's parties or just to hang out. Her eyes then fell on the wooden door at the back of the room. Emily headed toward the door, running her fingers over the black of each recliner. Once there, she reached for the cold iron doorknob and pushed open the door to reveal an unfinished room with cold cement floors and red bricks making up the walls. She walked into the room, turned the light on, and shivered as her bare feet hit the floor. She closed the door behind her before she walked toward a folding chair and sat down. "So," Emily began before she added, "long time no see." Across from Emily was, Emily. Her doppelganger was halfway out of the wall, with her bottom half submerged into the wall by a large black swirling void. Her arms were chained to the ceiling above, keeping them hung in place. Covering her mouth was a plague mask with tubes that snaked their way back into the void, keeping Emily's doppelganger in the wall. When her doppelganger saw Emily, she glared at her. "Oh, don't give me that harsh look," Emily said before she added, "Every time I come down here to visit you, you always give me such hateful glares. I'm doing this for you, you know. Do you want me to be left down here all alone?" Her question would go unanswered as her doppelganger simply glared at her. "Whoopsie me. I forgot you can't speak with that mask on," Emily said before she placed her right leg on top of her left and continued. "So, are you comfortable? Is that position hard for your back?" Again, her doppelganger simply glared at her. Emily just sighed. "Every time," she said before she got up and paced while continuing, "every time I come down here, all you do is glare. It's because of your position." Emily stopped and then had an epiphany. "I know. You're mad at all the alterations I made to your body," Emily said before she took a once-over at herself and added, "Well, I'm sorry, but I needed to. No one's going to get involved with how you originally looked. I had to help you look the part of an entertainer. A little bit of help in the bust area, and maybe a little inflated booty, and you got yourself eye candy." Emily then hugged herself as she began to drool. "You have no idea how much ecstasy I get when I get all those lustful stares from men and some of the women in the crowd. It's sometimes hard not to grab one of them and go to town with them. However, I need to remember my place in all this, Emily," she said before she looked back at her doppelganger, who was still glaring at her. "Maybe you don't like talking to me while I wear your skin, Emily," she said before she added, "Fine. How about we talk face to face?" Emily then began to morph. Her body began to grow as her baggy clothes began to become tight on her body. Her skin changed from its tan color to a coral orange. Her skin began to get rougher and resemble a texture of alligator skin. Her hands began to grow as her ring, middle, and index finger on each hand fused and formed one long, massive 4-inch hook-shaped talon, while the other two took the shape of much smaller talons. Her feet grew as well, but three of her toes fused into a long talon, while the other two fused and made the same thing, while from her heel grew a single long talon, each one being 4 inches in length. From her shoulders grew 5 long hairy spider legs, and looked like they were crawling up from her back rather than growing from her skin. The bottom of her mouth split in half, revealing large, shark-like teeth that seemed to spiral down her throat. A tail with an arrow-shaped tip wriggled out of its lower back and seemed to wrap itself around the creature's right arm. "So, how about now? Are you ready to talk?" the creature asked. Gone was Emily's Southern Belle accent. Each word seemed to be a different voice and a different accent, almost like different people were talking. Emily glared at the creature that took her life away. She made it laugh out loud and say, "Why are you mad at me? I am not the one who signed the contract. However, I will say you humans are so easy to manipulate." The creature laughed and walked over to Emily before getting at eye level with her. Emily simply glared into the large emerald green cat-like eyes of the creature before it added, "But I can't blame you, humans, for that fault. After all, you all inherited it from your ancestors. You wouldn't be in this predicament if they had just understood the terms and conditions of that apple." The creature walked back toward the folding chair and quickly changed back into its original form of Emily. It stretched and sighed. "Now, if you don't mind, I have to look into this Tiger King documentary the internet's raving about." Emily felt the chains around her arms begin to move as she was pulled from the void, the chains lifting her, leaving her dangling a few feet above the floor. The creature opened a door and stopped in the doorway before it added, "Now, I know you don't like this part, but I have staff that needs," the creature said as it turned to Emily and added, "a certain, how you say, need from my clients. You must understand, this is what it means to work with a succubus. You've dealt with this a few months now, and for what I've seen, you'll get used to it in a few more months." The creature just smiled at Emily as the plague mask suddenly disintegrated, showing long claw marks down and around Emily's mouth. The creature simply chuckled as she shut the light off and closed the door, leaving Emily in complete darkness. From where the door once stood, red eyes began to blink into existence. The creature chuckled as she walked away from the door and moved toward the stairs. As she took the first step, she turned to the empty wall where the wooden door once stood. 5 months ago. Emily sighed as she sat in the recording booth. She let the words of her vocal trainer echo in her mind. "You're doing great. A few more months and you'll be a star." "A few more months," Emily said to herself. She felt defeated at those words. Sure, she was progressing, but not the progression she was hoping for. Derek was already far past the expectations of his guitar coach and could already play through the fire and flames without many mistakes. Maddie was already playing through the fire and flames like he was part of the band, and he was already a natural singer. Raquel was natural on the bass guitar, and Eric had been playing the drums since he was a kid. So all that was left was her. She felt she was keeping the whole band from their dreams of being like their favorites. Linkin Park, Evanescence, Icon for Hire. All 3 of those are bands that I like. She wanted to be on the same path as her friends. She didn't want to be the reason they missed this year's music festival. "Well, someone seems to be down," a voice said, breaking Emily from her train of thought. She looked up to see a tall businesswoman with long raven black hair and emerald green eyes. The woman walked into the room and presented Emily with a business card. The business card had the woman's name in gold, etched on the top with her company's name underneath. In the corner was a large red inverted chaos star with arrows pointing to a goat's head in the middle. "Chaos Studios," Emily said as she looked up at the woman. She just laughed and took the seat across from Emily. "Yes, that's what our CEO wanted to call it. He's all about putting rock, punk, and metal back on the road to anarchy and chaos. He's a real fan of the old school metal and stuff," the woman said before she laughed. He's all business until he sees his idols and goes all fangirl. So what does he want from me, Mrs. Cross? Emily asked. Amy will be fine, Amy said before she continued. The CEO likes to keep tabs on any up-and-coming rock bands. The owner of the studio has told us wonders about you and your band. It's not my band, really. We're all equal parts of... Emily began before she waved her off. I know. But our CEO is interested in the band and the rather unorthodox name you've chosen. Emily said before she added, we know the next music festival's coming up in a few weeks, and we want to help the band be ready for the event. Amy then reached around to her bag and pulled out a contract. Now, we want to endorse Car Crash on the scenic route during the music festival, and to do so, we will offer all of our services to the band to ensure you are ready for the festival. All you need to do is sign. Now, this doesn't have to happen right away. We understand that you will want to talk this over with your bandmates, Amy explained, as though mentioning them would summon them. Maddie, Eric, Derek, and Raquel walked into the booth with the two. Hey, Emily, Matt said before he added, who's this? Pointing to Amy. Amy Cross. I'm part of Chaos Studios. My CEO is very interested in the band and wants to endorse you at the next festival. Really? Dude, that's awesome, Eric said. Amy smiled as the rest of the band huddled around Emily and began to sign the contract. Like clockwork, you all still fall, like Adam and Eve, Amy thought as she licked her lips. I really like that one. Well done. Hopefully my voice acting wasn't all over the place. I was kind of planning as I read. Alright. You know what? It wouldn't be October if I didn't read mine. So, hold on. I'm just making sure all of the students are okay with their homework. They look to be. Alright. You guys wanna... Fun fact, the story I wrote this to, the only song I listened to is Veracity by Myth and Royd. Can you link that in the Discord, please? I'd really like to listen to that. God, I love your writing style, dude. You're so good. I really, really enjoy it. I wish I could write like you. I really do. Alright. Let me find it. Shouldn't be long. Alright. I wrote this. I wrote this 3 years ago. But it's a classic. Y'all ready? Alright, let's do this. Username Saya. It's not a novel idea from anyone that people suffering from loneliness, IRL, often seek out company on the internet. A vast sea of shit. I forgot to change the fucking... Well, I gotta start over, but I do want to change this to match. There we go. Twitch decided to derp out on me. Welcome back. You didn't miss much. Sea of shit. Not quite. Not quite. Although I guess you could describe my writing as a sea of shit. All right, let me try this again. And glasses on this time. There we go. Username Saya by Wolf and Fiery Rain. It's not a novel idea from anyone that people suffering from loneliness IRL often seek out company on the internet. A vast sea of people, funneled by interests, even to some extent personality. A world on the web has been rapidly become almost as complex as the world around it, forming cultures and communities, with small tribes that feud and large fan bases that rally together. Now, in the quiet of this black, cold night, it's natural to wonder if the internet is developing its own ghosts and monsters too. It's hard to live in a place where no one understands you. I was never great at making friends around me, classmates, coworkers, random strangers that drift past you before you even process them. They all seemed unreachable and uninteresting to me. However, in the late night chats with strangers on online chat rooms and forums, I found something. Instead of the monotony and nothingness of the real world, I felt a drive. There was something exhilarating about the anonymity. I found fulfillment beyond anything I could imagine, seeking in those physically near me pleasures outside of any degree of propriety that would be tolerated by the boring mainstream culture surrounding my bedroom. But most of these connections would form and break quickly, just becoming a blur of experiences, instant gratifications. And then there was Saya. I met her at around 4 a.m. on a weekend, in the chat of an odd, disjointed stream of a strange and obscure game I've since either forgotten or blocked out of my memory. Chat was fast, far from empty, maybe a couple hundred viewers, but Saya stood out to me. A few playful remarks to each other in the public chat led us to private messaging. My God. She was electrifying, radiant even, cold in her speech with a slicing sense of sarcasm, a biting sense of humor. She spoke in riddles and mysteries, making me work for any small droplet of information, and yet still managing to keep me trying, keep rolling the dice with the words I could say, trying to gamble in the rigged game of trying to get more of her. Found out quite a bit after hours of trying, after coming back to that little chat box of private messages night after night, between pouring dull day after insipid, worthless day, burning the pale purple text of her username into the back of my head when I closed my eyes because I'd spent so long staring at it. 5 feet and 6 inches tall. Lived somewhere with heavy snowfall in the winter and mild summers in the Mountain Standard Time Zone. She was a Sagittarius, switching tones, in my opinion, rapidly from seductive to empathetic, to cold, to fiery, to mischievous. Sometimes blending them to the point where you wouldn't really know how she felt when she was saying something, rather typing something. But over time, I started to hear her voice in my head as I read her words, a soft, silken voice, laced in the same enigma that shrouded her. During the day, I was distracted. During the night, I had no rest. Even while I was asleep, it seemed that I was still puzzling over her. She was 23 years old. She was a dancer once, but she no longer performed. She used to do quite a bit of painting when she was younger, but those works were lost to time. That meant her father threw them in the fire. She once liked jazz, but now she's more into electronic music. When I asked her which artists, she named artists that I recall being popular a number of years ago. When I named more recently popular artists, she seemed not to recognize their names at all. She said if I were to ever find each other in person, she'd gladly make out with me to the tune of it, though. Before I could get more about that, I was lost in the sexual hallucination of imagining all the little details of her body she'd described at the times before. Continued my quest to uncover tantalizing detail at the agonizingly yet alluringly slow pace she revealed such information. The other girls I'd been talking to started feeling ignored. Their usually interesting and satisfying banter became boring to me. I could only think of Saya. She started asking me if I cared about her at all, what I was to her. Asked if I'd tear her to pieces if we met. I swore to her that I wouldn't. Tried to convey in cold characters what I'd have said in tender whispers. I'd never been more fascinated by someone in my life. She said she was unclean. I asked her what she meant. She went offline. I was thrown into a stormy and torturous sleep of tossing and turning, seeing what my imagination forged her image from her descriptions, flickering and flitting around in shadow. I started entirely missing tasks at work. My mother called, said I hadn't given her updates and how I've been in 2 months. I was disturbed by this change in me, but somehow I didn't care. Saya. Our chats have been growing more and more heated and passionate now, but I've lost the details to time. Her response time started to vary more than it ever had before. There were pauses. I longed to hear her. Really, this time. I asked if she had a mic of any kind. She told me she had one once, and if I played my cards right, she'd go find it again. Crimson, golden, brown, emerald leaves started falling. And for the first time in my life, I didn't give a shit. Saya. She asked me how I felt about women who'd been defiled. I asked what she meant. She said some deep part of me probably knew. She was right. I slept again and saw her pain. Black scars over areas I'd imagined pristine, somehow making her even more tempting. I felt sick with myself. But she laughed and didn't seem to care. She said I'd enjoyed her screaming nevertheless. Cold feeling in my stomach didn't dissipate for days. Started scanning for her to come online during the day. She never did. So as the sun was up, in every idle moment, I'd replay all the things we said through my head over and over again, trying to find patterns, trying to find a way in. Into what? I wasn't sure. October's chilly winds, once a favorite of mine to walk in, became annoying to me. Everything was a waste of time, except for Saya. I remember the date. Despite all the rest of time being condemned to a blur, it was the 27th of October. I felt energized during the day for the first time in a long while. Started talking to strangers, started focusing on work, called my mother. Saya was on my mind through all of it, but I cherished this sunny day for some reason. Not quite rushing as fast into the night as I would have normally. Maybe some part of me felt like maybe this would be my last day. I sat down at my desk, logged on, and immediately opened the conversation with Saya. This is the only conversation I remember in any sort of detail. Other than that, it's just been fragments littered all over my mind like shattered glass, shards burying into the flesh of my brain. We opened with the usual pleasantries, asking each other how the day was, and her always vague response, then things turned serious. "How would you like to spend forever with me?" she asked me. But this time, I really thought I heard echoes of her voice resonating through my head, even though all I could receive were typed words on the screen. I took a deep breath and told myself, but I could still hear her voice, soft with just a bit of rasp, inexplicable. I hesitated, trying to find a good answer to the question. "Well, I don't know," I murmured to myself as I typed the same words. We still have a lot of each other to get to know." "Well, I know enough. I want to stay with you." Her voice was more present in my head. I looked away from the screen, trying to straighten myself out. It's impossible. You can't hear her." "I don't even know where to find you," I explained. "How would we even find each other?" "I've already found you. That's all we need." Loud and clear. Even the rational part of me couldn't dispute it. I could hear her. "What do you mean you've already found me? You're creeping me out, Saya." I take a deep breath, a pause, and then write. "Also, why can I hear you?" "All I needed was your username." She chuckled. "Besides, even if you looked, you're never gonna find me. Not where you'd know where to search." A pause. "Saya, I'm being serious. I've been dead for 3 years." Her voice was deadpan. All of my blood ran cold suddenly. All of the color in the world seemed to run out the window's pale light, except for that purple username. "I left on my own terms. That's all that ever was, on my own terms. No one understands. They don't even understand what they all did. But you understand, don't you?" I could hear the smile in her voice now. "You're gonna stay with me forever, right?" "It's not funny, Saya. If you're joking around like that, you should get some help." I closed my eyes after hitting enter, telling myself this was all prank in poor taste. 'Tis the season for stupid jokes, right? "I've found help. I've found you." I heard her voice. My eyes were closed. It's not a prank. My eyes flew open. My hands flew from my face back to the keyboard, and I read the type that was normally white on that black background in blood red. "What's happening?" "Oh, come on. Don't you want to get to know me more intimately? You've been saying that for so long. What are you?" "I'm Saya." Smiley face. "No. What are you?" Suddenly, all the power went out in my apartment. Every light off. Even battery-powered devices switched to darkness. My alarm clock started to blink. 0000. My computer turned itself back on, but it was full screen. Just the chat box with Saya and I. Her text was in blood red, apart from the pale purple username. "You know what a ghost is, right?" she asked, her chuckle echoing in my head. "Well, imagine if those things existed on the internet. If someone, while living, was so emotionally tied to a place built on the web, place where she was defiled, tortured, and yet a place she belonged. "How are you doing this?" I screamed at the screen, forgetting to type, but I guess she heard anyway because she started typing in response, those 3 dots pulsating. "Those few who know I exist describe me like a virus, jumping from one host to the next, perpetuating myself. But I prefer to think of myself as just very lonely, looking for a warm place to spend my time stuck on Earth. And you've been so warm and inviting. What the hell do you want from me?" I hissed through my teeth. The computer again made an angry beeping sound, and my alarm clock went dark, then revived again, reading 99.99 in vermilion red, a change from its former soothing green. "I'm going to rip out your soul and occupy the space that's left behind," she growled. "And it's too late to stop me." Immediately I felt like there was a pulse of electricity running through my hand, up my arm, straight into my chest. I yanked my body away from the machine. I felt a strange emptiness of void seeping into my consciousness. Not hot, not cold, not pain or comfort, just oblivion. I have no idea how I was able to do this, but I got out in all the shock, stumbled out of my apartment. I didn't even bother locking it behind me. Just ran down the stairs in a feverish scramble as parts of my vision started to flicker and glitch like an old security camera. I rushed through the apartment lobby and tripped, falling straight into the fountain. I couldn't breathe for a moment, not even realizing I hit water. I felt something scream and recoil inside me. And then I was aware of pain, searing pain in my shoulder, knee, head, where my body had met tiling concrete of the fountain. I reared up my head, my eyes, and saw my nose running blood into the once pristine water. My soaked clothes, just dizzy with panic. Security personnel, eyebrows raised, helped me out of the fountain and then into an ambulance where they kept me overnight and psychologically evaluated me. Apparently I'd been talking nonsense. When I re-entered my apartment, it was like nothing had ever happened. I never revisited the site I found Saya. Started to reconnect with my family and friends, with people I hadn't spoken to in years. Visited more positive chats, trying to feel normal again. But it's hard to feel normal when you feel something inside you just barely hanging on by a thread. My soul. And Saya had almost torn it straight out. I now live my life in this state of semi-emptiness, fighting to stay where I am, trying to be in every moment when it feels like I'm always a breath from slipping away. I know you may not believe my story, but please take my warning. Beware of the monsters on the internet, of both the supernatural and the unfortunately natural kind. Beware, Saya. I didn't realize that the date matched today's date until I started reading it. And that's kind of uncomfortable. But yeah. Always love that one when you read it. Aw, thank you. Holy fuck. Yeah, I wrote that 3 years ago for Halloween. Got time, here's an old one, but a short one. Oh, no one likes Winnie the Pooh? Yeah, I can read it. Yeah, I was in a much different, like, to give some, I guess, behind the scenes on Saya, because I guess this is like 3 years in the making now, right? I was, I was damaged in a very particular way in the months leading up to that, and I was very angry and I was very vengeful and I was very upset. And I started thinking about justice and consequences of ways that what people had done could matter. I wrote this piece partially from the point of view of one of my abusers. With obvious significant modifications, but that piece has a lot behind it. And I might talk shit about it, but I think it's the best piece of horror I've written to date. It's not that good, but it's the best I got. But yeah, if that one hits different, that might be why. That one's no joke. All right. Oh yeah, this one's short. All right. This one is called All Stuffed with Fluff from our very own Chaos Dragoon. Oh shit. I forgot to change the background again. This no longer matches. Aw, that's sad. I don't remember how to get rid of it. Ah, there we go. That's a good one. I remember this one. Yeah, it's too far. Hold on. Actually, the fireplace might be a good one for that. Alright. All stuffed with fluff. I used to love Winnie the Pooh. I used to love watching the cartoons, reading the books, collecting the toys and plushies. However, I say used to, not because I grew out of the trend, but because of what I went through when I was 6. Now, every time I see a Pooh toy, see the opening show logo, or hear a child humming the tune of the show, I'm instantly taken back to the day I so much wish to forget. My therapist has tried to get me to confront my fears, and even has gone so far as to bring me a Pooh bear stuffed animal. As soon as I saw it, I freaked out. Just like she let in Leatherface, and he began swinging his chainsaw toward me. I tried so hard to get me to confront my tormented memories, but to no avail. This is where you all come in. She said if I tell my story to someone other than her, I might find the courage to face it and finally move on with my life. It happened 21 years ago when I had just turned 6. My mother took me to my favorite toy store, Geppetto's Workshop. Above the name was an image of Geppetto character from the Disney movie, working on Pinocchio. I loved that store. It was much smaller than the big corporate toy stores like Toys R Us. I loved wandering around the aisles, looking at all the handmade stuffed animals and handmade toys that littered the shelves. When I walked in, I wanted to run around the store like I used to find my birthday present. My child energy was still at its peak, even after the events of my party hours ago. My mother had prepared a 100-acre woods party complete with Winnie the Pooh decorations. One of her work friends even came in dressed like Winnie the Pooh, like the ones you'd see at Disney World. I was about to run through the store when my mother grabbed my hand tightly and said, "Stay with me, Matthew. I don't want you to miss seeing your present." I followed my mother toward the counter where the elderly man we called Geppetto stood waiting for us. "Well, hello there, Matthew. I heard you're turning 6 today," Geppetto said. I nodded and he continued. "Well, your mother called me ahead of time to get your birthday present ready. Did you know I make all the toys here?" My eyes widened as my naive child self asked, "Really? Do you have elves helping you like Santa?" This made him laugh out loud. Oh boy, I wish, but no," he said before he reached down and began to pull out plushies of Winnie the Pooh characters. When he placed the final plushie on the counter, I quickly pointed to the Winnie the Pooh one and asked for that. She simply shook her head and my excitement slowly dissipated. "Oh no, Matthew. We're getting all of them," my mother informed me. My excitement came back full force as I squealed with joy and danced as though I had spiders crawling all over me. My mother paid for my gift and Geppetto placed each one in an individual box. All except Pooh, who I wanted to have out while we went home. I continued to thank my mother as we walked to the car. When I climbed into the car, I hugged my Pooh plushie and felt something weird. I poked at the small lump in his stomach and looked at my mom. "Mom, I think something's wrong with Pooh Bear," I said. She reached back and felt the weird lump in his stomach. She poked it a bit more before she stopped. "Don't worry, honey, it's just Pooh's all stuffed with fluff and it needs to settle. Geppetto did just make them, and after many times stuffing gets stiff before broken in to feel normal," she said to me. I accepted it and continued to hug my Pooh Bear, unaware of the horrors ahead of me. Took that bear everywhere. To the park, to school, dentist and doctor's appointment, and even to bed. Thought of the thing sleeping next to my head. Makes me gag every time I think about it. However, at the time, I loved that Pooh Bear. Felt safe with it near me. But that would change 3 months after getting it. Like most overused toys, the plushie began to worn down. When I went to go pick him up, his arm had a slight rip where it connected to its body. Now, most kids would cry and run to their parents, but I'd already done that once and saw my mother sew up another plushie I'd ripped years earlier. I walked out of my room and found my mother watching TV. I showed her Pooh and said innocently, "Pooh has a boo-boo." She laughed and took Pooh from me. When she took him, she accidentally tore the arm from his body and the contents of Pooh Bear fell to the ground. When that happened, it was the first time I'd heard my mother scream in utter terror. The police came as my mother shakily told them about what she'd found not only in my Pooh Bear, but all the stuffed animals we'd gotten at Geppetto's workshop. Apparently, Geppetto was a sick person who found pleasure in the most grotesque way. My mother found this out when she saw a glassy human eyeball fall from inside of my Pooh Bear. She then ripped open my other plushies we got and found dried up human remains and dried up clumps of flesh mixed into the stuffing of my plushies. Police confronted Geppetto, or Arthur Johns, his real name, and found out that all the toys he created were meshed human remains with the materials of toys, stuffed animals filled with a mixture of fluff and human remains, wooden toy cars that aren't really made of wood, but created with human bones and painted to look like wood. and even his version of Lincoln Logs were nothing more than the bones of babies painted and made to look like the toy. It was later found that Arthur had a sick fetish of watching kids interact with the toys that he knew were made of, or had in them, human remains. He was arrested and found that all the human remains came from the cemeteries in our town and the town over. He would dig up the bodies, take what he wanted, clean up each body part, and then use them in his toys. That's basically it. That's why I can't stand Winnie the Pooh, and I'm not sure talking about it here will even help me. However, one of my friends said he and his wife are opening a toy store. When I told my therapist this, she thought helping out in the store might help my fears, and my friend said he'll try not to have too many Winnie the Pooh stuff. I figured, what the hell, I'll help out since I desperately want to conquer my fears. This way I can keep kids from experiencing the hell that I had to go through, and since I have master sewing skills from my mother, I can help repair and even make some stuffed animals I can sell on the shelves. All I need to do is to make sure the stitching doesn't rip and expose the plushie's contents hidden inside. God, it's so good. Every time, it's so good. It's so good. Fucking well done, Chaos. I have poetry I could read. I'll do a little poetry, why not? I wonder how many people think the plushie comes to life. I still love stuffed animals. I mean, it's known on the stream that I keep them on my streaming desk for anti-anxiety. Like when I get anxious on stream, I reach over to one of them and I just hug it to my chest for a few minutes. And then I feel fine. And I had a few that I carried everywhere. I had a Beanie Baby of a Canada Goose that's staring at me from my altar right now. Right next to the green unicorn I absolutely could not sleep without. Both of them perched right next to my grandfather's photo. They're treasures to me. They used to be guardians to me when I was younger. To a degree, they still are. They kind of remind me that I'm still me. I'm still the same kid. Just older. Could it be filled with something other than fluff? Yeah, beans. Like little plastic beans. I hope. Alright. So, this one's called The Manic Mockingbird. I wrote this. I wrote this earlier this year. And it's got like spooky undertones that sort of echo some of the stuff we've been reading about today. Forgive me, my love, if for in the night you hear things that fill you with dread or fright, or bitter agony through empathy because of the words that come out of me. The horrors that I keep silent by day in my sleep seem to go on full display, the cries for mercy that had gone ignored, and bitterness and rage that have been stored, and other traumas that transpired when you hadn't met me yet and won't again, and vile perversions, violent and obscene, that no exorcist, sage, or priest could clean out of my fucked, deeply corrupted core. the damaged code from awful days of yore may spill from my unconscious lips to spite my shame and my composure in the light. You might disgusted be, thinks demon stirred, but it's just I repeat the things I've heard. Perhaps if you had known before we met the monster that I was, you would have set yourself away and never toward my door, and save yourself regret from hearing more. I warned you long ago, yet you're still here, delaying my pain if you disappear, and leaving me to wonder why you care so much for me to choose this fate unfair. Whether or not you could believe a word, it's just song from a manic mockingbird. This is about sleep talking. It's short, but it's very emotive, and I feel like it was relevant. I wrote happier ones. Let me find a happier one. That one's for spring. What's one for fall? Because he was dead. Hey, Foo Spaghetti. Let's see. Ah, crap. This is another sad one, but it's kind of relevant. Yeah, it kind of fits the mood. This one's called I Didn't Mean It. It's another short little poem I wrote way back when. Streamers of gauze unwrap themselves, dangling without care from ceilings to overlook hell festivals, fervent exercises without feelings. All of the dancers stay in pairs, drinking a blood-red wine to refresh the senses, and each proudly wears elegant and graceful dresses of flesh. Parodies of violence displayed on dance floors of silken bedsheets, performed as outside light decayed. The music's pace is kept using heartbeats. Colorful piñatas release confetti of scopolamine. Despite this elation, won't cease mistakenly deploying dopamine. As sunlight breaks to the dark, the trance breaks to reveal the broken place. The lovers could not dare to glance for fear of seeing bruises on each other's face. It's kind of making a mockery of the idea of possession. And other stuff. And then there's one about my username, and I think I'll close on that one. This is why I'm called Wolf in Fiery Rain. Well, part of why. I don't know if it's why, or if it's just I wrote a poem about it. I don't know. It's up to interpretation. Through the dense woods over sweet grass in the shade of the mountain pass, where petals from the trees would drift by wind's will to caress the cliff, there traveled beast of natural kind, of innocent heart, of pure mind, of eyes that pierce through dusk and dawn, a fur coat warm as gentle fire, a wolf untamed meant to live on, away from one's lust and desire. And in the winter wearing white, the snow embraced her in moonlight. But soon the deer did not appear, and all the game of illness died. They with a heavy heart left here, in search of food, the winds their guide. Their pack by now had vanished all, their heart for safety anguish masked. And by the night, the long-drawn calls, their howl, was just a habit's task. Wandered on as long they could, further than perhaps they should. They danced and fought with demons strange, who tore their heart, their spirit maimed, who burned themselves to memories. Their invasions, those treacheries. The pain weakened them drastically, but still they searched on desperately, where the virgin snow was now gone, where rivers flowed, where blood was drawn. The blue sky dimmed with what could seem like fumes, black clouds of gasoline. And instead of sweet rain, that pacifier, the sky would cry streaking torrents of fire. And as they yearned for virgin frost, and all the rest that they had lost, in fields of embers where the flowers had once softened the spring's hours, they observed this land of hell, and adapted to it well, and wore the scars that marred their skin, and those within were furrowers thin, with an air of dignity and new survivability, and under poisoned sky became the wolf in fiery rain. God, all my poems are sad. What the fuck? Except for my love poems, which I'm not going to read on here. Those are usually happy. Because usually I write them as praises. But yeah, I feel my voice giving. Do it. Hey, Hindrance. Ah, fuck. Alright, I'm gonna choose one of them. Oh. You know what? I'm gonna do one about the birds. Alright? I made a love poem about birds. You wanna know what a hooded merganser looks like? Hooded merganser. I wrote a fucking love poem about this bird. This is the male, and these are the females. And this is what they look like together. And they're cute, and they're wonderful, and they have these little sweet things that they do together when they're courting each other so that they have little ducklings. Like this. So, this poem is called In Praise of a Pair of Hooded Mergansers. And it's in iambic pentameter. Fuck my life. To look so innocent and full of grace as two hooded mergansers in a chase, upon the stream as spring comes to full sway, is what my treasure is to find today. The female's crown of rust and his of white flare up and fold like fans to my delight, and as the crumbs I threw to them go under, they dive into the river like from thunder. Although so simple, I never thought so sweet, a pair of lovers on water to meet. And I wrote that for Tenshi. It was basically my way of saying, wow, this doesn't have to be scary. Which was news to me. And here's another. Just because that one was short. This one's called Dawn Through the Wire. I hear the rise of dawn through the wire. Birds in chorus singing at the break of day, far across a salted lake, 5 hours away from where blazing fire was set on my awake and beating heart, with use of a divine and twilight art. Back through metal cords I'll gladly send, by some clandestine airways overhead, a secret information from my bed, encoded with a time that for my friend was past, still just waiting for me to cease all of my working and join him in peace. Yeah. Pretty tame stuff here. How am I? I'm doing well. Yeah. I wrote poetry for Tenshi when we were recording. I think that was the first time, like, I'd actually just been straight up smitten in love. Okay, this one's a little more risque. I'm not gonna read that one. But yeah. Yeah, I used to write love poetry. Yeah, I think that's all of the good poetry. I think that's all of the good shit. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, like I I haven't written poetry in a while. The Manic Mockingbird was the last one I've written for a while. And lately I've been focused on writing like practical stuff for like work and personal use, and I ought to get back into creative writing, but I've got a lot going on in my head, and a lot of the stuff I've been writing is NSFW and Monka TOS. So I haven't been sharing it as much, but it is something I want to do again. Ooh la la, not really. Mostly about trauma. Not gonna lie. Not you probably would not schlick to this. Not that kind of thing. Unless I don't know, unless you're into that. We all have our damage. Yeah. Some of us swear it better than others. It's all. I think I look quite shitty in mine, but that's okay. But you know, I've built a community where that's okay. Where it's okay to kind of just come as you are. Because if I didn't, then don't know why I'm still here. One more very small story to start to a bigger story. My voice is fucking fucked chaos. I'm sorry. I might read it later on in the week. We might do more spooky stories later, but like I feel my voice going and it hurts. But yeah. Yeah. But we will be on tomorrow with Phantasmophobia, and if Tenshi can join us, I've invited him to join us because I know he fucking loves that game. You should rest. I know a thing or two about more. Yeah, you do. So we've got that, and that'll be good. But drink grapefruit juice. I've got plenty of water. I'll be alright. I just need to shut the fuck up for a while. And the world will be thankful for it. God damn, if you guys... I don't know how you guys bear to listen to my voice so fucking much. I sure couldn't do it. Kudos to you. But yeah, that's the content I've got tonight. And we'll do more spooky story reading as we desire over the course of the week. And then on Sunday, Chinese Pokemon is coming back with Auxie, and I'm super excited about that. So, gives us something to look forward to. But, in the meantime, please tell me I didn't just open Audacity, motherfucker. In the meantime, do not eat or drink. Wow, the fire sped the fuck up. In the meantime, do not eat or fucking. Stupid DID. Stop driving all at once, everyone. Later. Hey, not a problem, Chad. It was my pleasure. In the meantime, do not eat or drink any questionable substances. Make smart decisions. Do not die. Dying is absolutely forbidden, and I will see all of you wonderful people at a later time. Take care, guys.